Most entrepreneurs in this region are living on a prayer, not a strategy. If your supplier raises prices, you're dead. If the grid fails, you're dead. If the trucker is late, you're dead. You don't own a business, you own a leash. I've just released the Industrial Sovereignty Audit. It's the exact framework I use at Alpha Holding to migrate from cash to steel. Stop being a tenant of your own dream and start owning the battlefield. And before we dive into today's audio, I invite you to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Most of you listening to my voice right now are living a lie. You wake up, you check your bank balance, you look at your staff, and you tell yourself, I am an entrepreneur. I own my life. But let's look at the cold reality. You don't own a business, you own a leash, and the other end is held by people you've never even met. Think about it. If your fish feed supplier in Europe decides to hike prices by 20% tomorrow morning, what happens to your profit? It evaporates. You don't decide your margins, they do. If the national power grid in Abidjan fails for 12 hours and your backup generator isn't enough, your fish die by the thousands. You don't own your production, the grid does. If the third-party trucker you hired is late because his engine is poorly maintained, your reputation with the client is the one that rots. You are what we call a price taker. You are working 14-hour days, sweating in the sun, managing the stress, all to pay the tax of the people who actually own the steel, the soil, and the infrastructure. You aren't the boss. You are a high-level tenant paying rent on your own dreams. Sovereignty isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much control you keep. It is time for the ant audit. It's the only way to see who really owns your neck before they decide to pull the cord. Why do some empires last for centuries while others crumble at the first sign of inflation? Look at Gianluigi Aponte, the founder of MSC. While every other entrepreneur in the 70s was obsessed with marketing and branding, Aponte was obsessed with ships, pure, heavy, industrial steel. Marketing is a vapor. It's an intangible asset that can disappear with a change in an algorithm or a shift in public mood. But a ship is a hard asset. It is a physical piece of the value chain. Aponte understood a fundamental truth. If you rely on someone else's boat to move your goods, they own your destiny. They can choke your supply chain, they can prioritize your competitors, and they can squeeze your margin until you have nothing left. This brings us to the Aponte rule. In my system, we rate every dependency on a scale of 1 to 10. Any score above a 5 is what I call a gully. A gully is a geographic or operational bottleneck where an external force can kill your empire. If you are a 9 out of 10 dependent on an external provider for your logistics, you aren't walking on solid ground. Vous marchez sur une corde raide. Today, we are going to map those gullies and hear exactly where your infrastructure is failing you. Before we dive into the data, understand the mindset shift. The artisan seeks to be loved for his work. He wants to be the best at his craft. But the industrialist seeks to be indispensable through his system. He doesn't want to be the best player. He wants to own the stadium. If you want to move from a fragile ant to a sovereign colony, you have to stop thinking about sales and start thinking about structures. You have to stop being a victim of the market and start being the architect of your own ecosystem. Let's open the books. Close your eyes for a moment and visualize your business ledger. I want you to look at a real-world audit of a standard industrial project in West Africa. This is the before state. This is the map of a tenant business. Let's look at the first category, raw materials. For many of you in aquaculture, your fish meal comes from an external supplier, likely imported. We've rated this a risk 8. Why? Because you have zero control over global shipping costs or the price of soy and fish meal in the international market. You are vulnerable. Look at the second category, energy. You are relying on the national grid. Risk 7. In our regions, blackouts aren't a possibility. They are a certainty. Without a sovereign energy plan, your entire biomass is one power cut away from total loss. Now, look at the third category, logistics. This is the killer. Most SMEs rent their transport. Risk 9. You are paying a premium to a third party who doesn't care about your cold chain as much as you do. When I hear a 9 in a business audit, I don't hear a business. I hear a predator waiting to take your lunch. You are fragmented. You are paying a sovereignty tax to everyone else, and that is why your margins are razor thin. You are working for the trucker, the power company, and the importer. You are the last person to get paid in your own company. Now let's talk about the transformation. This is what we do at Alpha Holding. We don't just grow, we integrate. We migrate from cash, which loses value, to steel, which creates power. Visualize your 5-year roadmap. 12 months in, we stop the bleeding in logistics. Instead of paying 2 million CFA a month in rentals, we invest that capital into our own fleet. We launch the Mobilis 12-meter hybrid vessel. Suddenly, our logistics risk drops from a 9 to a 2. We own the route, we own the timing. 3 years in, we tackle the soil. We stop being victims of the international feed market. We build the BSF, Black Soldier Fly Unit. We take organic waste and turn it into high-quality protein on-site. We have effectively internalized our sourcing. Our risk drops from an 8 to a 3. 5 years in, we reach the sovereign node. We don't just produce fish or move goods. We own the hub. We acquire the warehouse, the cold storage, or the strategic terminal. We become the gatekeeper. Now your competitors have to pay you to move their goods. Imagine this after state. While the rest of the market is panicking because fuel prices rose or the grid failed, your costs are fixed. Your operations are silent. You aren't just in the market. You are the market. You have achieved industrial peace. How do you cross that bridge from the ant to the sovereign? It isn't through magic. It's through what I call the salt test. Aponte knew the smell of his engines. He didn't lead from a skyscraper in Geneva. He led from the deck of his ships. To bridge the gap, you need technical empathy. When was the last time you spent 24 hours on the factory floor? Not as a visitor, but as an operator. When was the last time you checked the salinity of your ponds yourself, or sat with your captain during a storm? If you don't know the exact unit cost of your business, per kilo of fish, per kilometer of transport, per square meter of construction, without checking a file, you are blind. The bridge to sovereignty is built with data and grease. You build the failure SOP. You ask yourself, if my primary supplier disappears tomorrow, what is my 48-hour bypass plan? If you don't have an answer, you don't have a business. You have a hope, and hope is not a strategy. This audit tool is the bridge that turns your hope into a mechanical certainty. By now, you should be aware that strategy is just a dream until you have the tools to measure it. You've heard the framework, you've heard the logic of Aponte and Geiger, but the execution doesn't happen in an audio file. It happens in the details of your own ledger. I've spent the last several years refining these tools for my own ventures in Côte d'Ivoire. I've made the mistakes so you don't have to. I know what it's like to have a risk-9 logistics chain fail you when you have tons of fish ready for market. I know the cost of dependency. That is why I've made the Industrial Sovereignty Audit available to you. I have uploaded the master Excel file I've been describing to my Patreon. This isn't just a blank table. It includes the pre-filled risk formulas, the color-coded gully alerts, and the 5-year roadmap template I use to structure Alpha Holding and Agrico. It is the tactical map for your migration from cash to steel. I want to be very clear. I don't sell motivation. Motivation is for artisans who need to feel good to work. I share the steel. What you will find on the Corifea Patreon are the standard operating procedures, the SOPs, that allow me to manage complex agricultural holdings, maritime logistics, and real estate projects simultaneously. This is the black box of my operations. It is the result of thousands of hours of field testing in the toughest markets. If you are tired of being a tenant, if you are tired of paying a tax to your suppliers and competitors, then it's time to become the architect. Stop listening from the sidelines. Go to the link in my bio right now. Join the Corifea Inner Circle on Patreon. Download the Sovereignty Audit, run your numbers, and find your gullies. Your 7-day implementation clock starts the moment you open that file. An empire is not built by winning every battle. It is built by owning the battlefield. I am Parfait Eti, and this is Corifea Strategic. I'll see you on the inside.